Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport. And today is another Grand Prix weekend day, and the Portuguese Grand Prix has just finished, so it's time for my review. Now we are going to discuss all the action from the Portuguese Grand Prix of 2021, and spoilers, it's going to be quite a short video because not a lot happened. This was a very forgettable Grand Prix. This is not going to go down in history as a pivotal moment in motorsport history. So with my opinion of the whole race out of the way in the first 30 seconds, remember to subscribe and let's begin.
Welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport.
This is as easy a win as Hamilton will probably get this year, and it already looks like Mercedes have pushed away from Red Bull in the development race. They brought upgrades to the rear end of their car, which was supposedly the problem area, despite the fact they still look like the best car on the grid. And all weekend, the Mercedes, both drivers look quicker than the Red Bull drivers. Maybe it's the track, but I think Mercedes now have a definite advantage over Red Bull. The one upside for Red Bull over last year is that Sergio Perez is performing better than Alexander Albon did. Despite not getting any great results so far, he was in a position where if strategy went their way, they could have presented a problem for Mercedes to overcome in Sergio Perez. As it turned out, they just left Perez way too long on his tyres, and Hamilton breezed past him without really losing any time. So it was a bit of a waste, but at least in the future, it looks like that can be a plan B. As for the actual race, it was Bottas on pole, which surprised me because he hasn't looked good all year. And in the race, that was probably as true as it gets. It's rare that you'll see any Mercedes driver down in the midfield, but Bottas definitely looked like the third best driver out of the top three, not including Perez, who got held up by Norris and had a bad start. So Bottas still looks average. It's definitely between Verstappen and Hamilton as to who the best drivers in the grid are. And I think Verstappen just didn't have it this weekend. Red Bull looked a few tenths off Mercedes. It's not as big a gap as it was last year, but a gap is opening up. As I said, it could be the track. Maybe this track just suited Mercedes better than it did Red Bull. It was a low deg track. But it does sort of send a warning shot for the rest of the year that it's possible a lot of these Grand Prix are going to be dull as anything because Mercedes are just going to walk away with it again. That's what we were hoping to avoid in testing when Mercedes looked off the pace. It's now clear they were sandbagging. There is no Red Bull advantage. It is either level pegging as it appeared to be in the first two races, or a slight Mercedes advantage as we saw in Portimao. There really isn't anything else to talk about. All the overtakes in this race were pretty much DRS assisted rouge pasts. They weren't really any battles. There was a few in the midfield briefly, and it actually looked like a really good battle between Latifi and Schumacher down in 18th and 19th, or 17th and 18th. That's the best we really got. I'm going to throw my driver of the day out there straight away now. It was Fernando Alonso, who went long with his first strategy and made a couple of good overtakes towards the end. Again, DRS assisted, but it was still a good drive from the two-time champion. It's nice to see that he's maybe getting to grips better and quicker than I actually thought he would. Ocon had a great drive as well. The Ferraris, Leclerc did okay. Sainz had a lot of early pace, but he dropped back on a bad tyre choice. The rest of the field is really as expected. There's no point going through everyone. Mazepin was way off everyone and got in the way of Sergio Perez as well, so his reign of terror is still going on, and I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he got sacked at the midpoint of the championship. I've probably been discussing the tracks more this year than I have in previous years, just because a 23 race calendar is a really insane thing. It's the biggest calendar ever, and it's not really necessary, and Portimao did not need to be on this calendar. It was brought in as a short gap last year to replace some of the rounds that had been cancelled. Did not need to come back in 2021. The 2020 race wasn't that interesting. I don't really remember it. I know Hamilton won, but I don't think a lot happened in that race either. The only real instant of note in this race was Raikkonen running into Giovinazzi, losing his front ring and retiring on lap 1 or 2. It's the end of lap 1. That's it. Nothing else of note really happened. Everyone finished where you kind of expect them to finish. This is probably This was the weakest race of this year. I'm struggling to think of a race last year that was duller. I would say Paul Ricard in 2019 was probably the race that was as boring as this. Or at least where as little happened. Hamilton got past Verstappen and Bottas, and from that point on, nothing really interesting happened at the front. Verstappen got Bottas at the pit stops. Verstappen took fastest lap. After that, it was just waiting for Hamilton to catch Perez, and then no one could close in on each other. Maybe it's just not a track suited to Formula 1, because I'm sure I've seen touring car races at this track that have been fine, but it just doesn't work in Formula 1. And we go on to Catalonia next week, or in a couple of weeks. That should be better, but Catalonia is not a great track either. It's what's used in pre-season testing normally, so it's the track the teams know best. But again, I don't think you really see a lot of overtakes on that track. But maybe we'll see some carnage or a shock winner. I don't think so though. It seems even more Mercedes versus Red Bull and no one else. They are so far ahead of every other team on the grid. You're not going to get any surprise winners unless stuff happens. And that's not how you want to watch motorsport. You don't want to watch motorsport and go, I want to see stuff happen so crazy people can win. You want to watch good, tight racing. There's no real overtakes in Formula 1 anymore. The majority of the overtakes in this race were DRS assisted. Both the important ones Hamilton made on Verstappen and Bottas were made possible because he had DRS. Most of the field towards the end of Alonso moving forward, Ricciardo made a few overtakes. All of it was DRS assisted. It would probably be worse if there was no DRS. We'd only have like 1 or 2 overtakes a race. But at the same time, at least there'd be real overtakes. It might actually encourage battling, going wheel to wheel. With DRS, you've overtaken them before you've even reached a corner, really. And this race is everything that doesn't work with Formula 1. It's the massive gap between the front runners and the midfield. It's the DRS assisted overtakes. It's a severe lack of action on track. The midfield is getting strung out, and I really thought this would be the closest midfield in years. I thought Ferrari, McLaren, possibly Aston Martin and Alpine, I thought they'd all be really tight this year, and it's not really working out that way. I thought AlphaTauri might be getting in that fight, and they're not really there. They're sort of at the back end of it. But the gaps between every team is probably bigger than it's been in a long time. I think it's actually worse than last year. I'm hoping the new regulations change that. We're talking about closer racing and teams being able to follow each other. But in the same instance, I think they should get rid of DRS as well. And I don't think sprint race qualifying is going to help. I did a video about this already, but I don't like the idea. This qualifying was fine. It is fine. It doesn't need to be updated. That's not the problem. There are other problems in Formula 1, and sprint race qualifying is not going to fix it. It's not too long. We'll get to Monaco soon. Monaco is always good. You don't see overtaking at Monaco, but it's historic and it looks cool. So we're looking to the future. There will be good races this year. This one was a forgettable Grand Prix in Portugal. So thank you for watching. Remember to subscribe and have a good one.